The smell that hits you every single time you turn on your car AC is not stale air. It is mold growing on a metal component hidden behind your dashboard called the evaporator core. Every car with air conditioning has one. Every evaporator collects moisture, traps organic debris, and slowly transforms into a breeding ground for fungus, bacteria, and contamination that most drivers never even realize they are breathing every single day. A study published in the journal Air Quality, Atmosphere, and Health tested 35 random vehicles and found Staphylococcus bacteria, Aspergillus fungus, and Penicillium mold colonies growing inside the air conditioning systems of nearly every car tested. Some of those organisms are classified as risk group 2 biohazards, meaning they are capable of causing disease in humans. That smell inside your vents is not old air. It is active mold spores being blasted directly into your lungs every time the fan starts spinning. And while millions of people unknowingly inhale it on the way to work, the auto service industry quietly charges between $150 and $300 to spray a $12 can of foam into the system for less than 5 minutes. Meanwhile, a simple powder that costs less than $1 can destroy the contamination permanently. They knew about this problem from the beginning. They always knew. But a $1 solution cannot create recurring profit, and anything that cannot create recurring profit gets buried. This is the hidden story behind one of the cheapest car repairs on Earth and the billion-dollar industry that desperately hopes you never discover it. In 1939, the Packard Motor Car Company introduced something the world had never seen before at the National Automobile Show in Chicago, the first factory-installed automotive air conditioning system ever placed inside a production vehicle. The system was manufactured by Bishop and Babcock in Cleveland, Ohio. It weighed more than $100 LB, occupied nearly half the trunk space, and cost $274, which equals roughly $5,800 today after inflation. There was no thermostat, no temperature control. To shut the AC off, drivers literally had to stop the car, open the hood, and disconnect the compressor belt by hand. Between 1939 and 1942, Packard sold only 1,500 units before the option disappeared entirely because the technology was expensive, primitive, and wildly impractical. But buried inside that first system was the exact same component modern vehicles still use today, the evaporator core, a cold metal coil carrying refrigerant through thin aluminum fins designed to pull heat and moisture out of the cabin air. The moisture would condense onto the metal and drain underneath the car through a rubber hose. But engineers already understood the dangerous side effect. Dust, pollen, fibers, and microscopic organic debris carried through the airflow would stick directly to those wet metal surfaces. Inside a sealed, dark compartment with no airflow after the engine shuts off, the evaporator became the perfect environment for biological growth. By 1954, Nash Motors introduced the first fully integrated dashboard-mounted air conditioning system called the All-Weather Eye. By 1969, more than half of all American cars already came equipped with factory AC systems. Today, nearly 99% of all new vehicles sold worldwide include air conditioning as standard equipment. That means roughly 280 million registered vehicles on American roads currently contain evaporator cores, hidden behind dashboards, collecting moisture every time drivers turn on the AC. The German Association of Engineers, known as the VDI, publicly stated that every third passenger car on the road is either marginally or heavily contaminated with mold, bacteria, and fungal growth inside the ventilation system. Not abandoned vehicles, not neglected junk cars, every third car driving on the road today. Researchers from the Institute of Medicine later confirmed that exposure to mold causes coughing, wheezing, respiratory irritation, and long-term breathing problems, even in healthy adults. The National Institutes of Health discovered prolonged mold exposure can increase the risk of developing asthma, especially in children. That means the same contamination commonly found inside water-damaged buildings is now circulating through vehicle dashboards, while families drive to school, work, and home every day completely unaware. The evaporator core sits buried inside a sealed housing called the HVAC box directly behind the dashboard. When the AC compressor activates, liquid refrigerant enters the evaporator at extremely low temperatures. The blower motor then pulls warm cabin air across the freezing metal fins. The sudden temperature difference forces moisture in the air to condense onto the evaporator surface, exactly like water droplets forming on a cold glass during a humid summer afternoon. Under normal conditions, that water drains safely through a small rubber hose underneath the vehicle. The puddle you sometimes notice beneath your parked car during summer is evaporator condensation draining normally, but hidden inside that system is a design flaw almost nobody talks about. Every single particle floating through the cabin air enters the ventilation system. Dust, skin cells, pollen, pet dander, food particles, fabric fibers, organic debris. Those particles collide with the wet evaporator fins and stick permanently to the damp surface. And then the engine shuts off, airflow stops, the evaporator remains wet in total darkness for hours or even days. According to the Centers for Disease Control, mold thrives in exactly those conditions: moisture, darkness, organic material, and stagnant air. Once colonies begin forming, they release spores and volatile organic compounds directly into the airflow. Every time the AC starts, the blower fan pushes contaminated air straight into your face. Researchers in the air quality study discovered species from the Aspergillus and Penicillium genera growing directly on evaporator surfaces. Aspergillus fumigatus alone causes more than 200,000 invasive infections worldwide every year, and investigators found it inside ordinary passenger vehicles driven by ordinary families. Even the cabin air filter designed to trap contaminants becomes part of the problem. Once clogged with moisture and debris, the filter itself transforms into another breeding ground for bacteria and fungus. The German VDI guideline even warns that contaminated cabin filters can create greasy residue on the inside of windshields, reducing visibility and increasing accident risk. Your vehicle is not only affecting your health, it is potentially reducing driving safety at the same time. Yet despite all this information, dealerships continue presenting AC cleaning as a premium maintenance service, costing between $150 and $300, even though the actual process takes only minutes. The automotive repair industry in the United States generates more than $75 billion every single year. Worldwide, that number exceeds $800 billion. One of the most profitable upsells in dealership service departments is AC system cleaning. The process follows the exact same script everywhere. A customer arrives for an oil change or routine inspection. A service advisor carrying a clipboard suddenly explains that the climate control system needs decontamination or evaporator cleaning. Different dealerships use different names, but the strategy never changes. The customer is quoted between $150 and $300 for the service. Inside the workshop, a technician removes the cabin air filter, sprays disinfectant foam into the system, waits a few minutes, and then reinstalls the filter. Total labor time often stays under 5 minutes. The wholesale price of the chemical foam usually ranges between $8 and $15. That means dealerships sometimes charge more than 2,000% markup for a procedure involving a single aerosol can and a few minutes of labor. Former dealership service managers admitted publicly that many service departments pressure advisors to recommend unnecessary procedures simply to increase revenue targets. The cabin air filter replacement follows the same strategy. Dealers charge between $50 and $100 to replace a filter, costing only $8 to $15 online, even though installation usually takes less than 30 seconds. Open the glove box, release 2 clips, pull out the old filter, slide in the new one. Finished. The reason this system survives is simple. Most drivers never learn what is actually happening behind the dashboard, because the moment people discover the contamination source and understand how easy it is to clean, the entire upsell model collapses instantly. Here is the method. Go to any grocery store or dollar store and buy a box of baking soda along with a bottle of 3% hydrogen peroxide. Total cost stays under $1. Mix 2 tablespoons of baking soda into a spray bottle filled with warm water. Add 1 R4 cup of hydrogen peroxide. The baking soda neutralizes acidic byproducts created by mold and bacteria, while the hydrogen peroxide destroys microorganisms through oxidation. Next, locate the cabin air filter. In most vehicles, it sits directly behind the glove box. Open the glove compartment, push the side clips inward, and lower it carefully until the filter housing becomes visible. Pull the old filter straight out and examine it closely. If the vehicle is more than a year old, layers of gray and black debris often cover the filter surface. That contamination has been circulating through the ventilation system the entire time. With the filter removed, direct access to the blower motor and upper evaporator area becomes available. Spray the baking soda and peroxide mixture generously into the opening so the liquid reaches the evaporator fins below. Start the engine and set the AC to the lowest fan speed while keeping the windows open. Allow the blower to circulate the solution through the system for 15 to 20 minutes. Afterward, switch the fan to the highest setting for another 5 minutes to flush loosened contamination through the drain tube underneath the vehicle. Dark, discolored water may begin dripping onto the ground beneath the car. That liquid contains months or even years of accumulated biological growth, leaving the ventilation system. Install a fresh cabin air filter purchased online for around $10, close the glove box, and the process is complete. Total time stays under 15 minutes. Total cost remains under $2. Total savings compared to dealership pricing can range between $148 and $398 depending on the service package. Preventing future mold growth requires one simple habit most drivers never learn. During the final 2 minutes before parking, switch off the AC compressor, but leave the fan running at high speed. Warm, dry air will continue flowing across the evaporator fins, drying the moisture before the engine shuts down. Mold cannot grow on a dry evaporator. Most people turn the engine off while the AC system is still cold and wet, trapping moisture inside a sealed dark compartment overnight. That creates the exact environment mold colonies need to spread. Ironically, many manufacturer owner manuals quietly recommend drying the evaporator before parking, but dealerships rarely mention the procedure because the contaminated system creates repeat service visits every single year. If the evaporator drain tube becomes physically clogged with debris, it may need to be cleared manually first. The drain hose usually exits underneath the passenger side of the vehicle. A flexible piece of wire inserted gently into the opening can remove blockages and restore drainage. In cases where severe contamination has developed over many years, repeating the treatment once per month for 3 months may be necessary to fully eliminate remaining mold colonies. The reality is unavoidable. The auto industry designed evaporator systems that collect moisture from the very beginning. They understood mold growth was inevitable. Other industries already admitted the same issue exists inside moisture-collecting appliances. Whirlpool added antimicrobial coatings to washing machine components after acknowledging mold contamination problems publicly. Yet the automotive industry never implemented similar large-scale solutions because a moldy evaporator became something far more valuable than a defect. It became recurring revenue. $200 service visits once or twice every year multiplied across 280 million vehicles creates an enormous business model hidden inside ordinary maintenance routines, and all of it can be disrupted by a solution costing less than $1.